Luxury real estate versus average price point homes. In today's video, I want to talk to you guys about the pros and the cons of working in both the luxury space and in the average price point of homes. What's up everyone, my name is Mike Sherrard. Thank you so much for tuning in as always, and if you're new, welcome to my channel. Please make sure you give this video a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, subscribe so you don't miss another video. Now, in today's video, I want to address something that I get asked time and time again, but put a bit of a switch on it. Now, a lot of people ask me how to get into the luxury real estate space. They see me listing some of these multi-million-dollar listings, they look gorgeous, they're amazing, and they truly are. But what they don't think about is some of the cons to the real estate space in the high-end price point, but also the pros of dealing with the average price point of real estate. So in today's video, I want to address both. I'm going to talk about the pros and the cons to dealing in the luxury space. And I'm going to talk about the pros and the cons of dealing with the average price point homes. So let's get into it and see what's going to be the best fit for you. Let's start with the luxury space because that's what everybody's curious about. Everybody sees million-dollar listing, they see these gorgeous homes, they see the TV shows, and they wonder how they can get into that space. So what I'm going to talk about is first the pros of the luxury space and then the cons. Now, the pros are obviously the price point. We know that our commission as real estate agents is tied to the sale price of a home. So of course, the higher the sale price, the more money you get. Not only that, but also a pro is the fact that it's the time value of money. Oftentimes it takes the same amount of time to list and sell a $1 million listing as it would for a $500,000 listing. So if you're selling a home that happens to be $3 million, oftentimes the photos, the videos, the content, it takes around the same amount of time as the average price point home. But when you sell it, if it's $3 million versus $500,000, within the same amount of time that you just worked, you just made 6 times more money. Another pro of it is you just get to see some absolutely crazy homes. Some of these custom multi-million-dollar listings are astronomically crazy. They just have some of the most unique features, crazy features, stuff that you would never have access to see otherwise. So when you get to deal with these homes, it honestly is a very cool experience. I can't deny it's really fun to take a tour through these homes, have the owners show us some of the neat features, why they designed it this way, why they included this, that, or the other thing. And you get to see some really cool stuff that is very abnormal and the average person doesn't quite have access to see. Not only that, but it's just good for branding in general. Having these luxury listings for social media, for branding, for marketing, they do really well. They convert really high. People are very interested in them. So it will get more attention than the average price point of home. So a pro of the luxury space is definitely the attention that it's going to get on your marketing and for your personal brand as a whole. Now let's talk about the cons of the luxury space. Now, if you're in a hot market, this might not apply. But I want to talk to you guys about the average market or the market, for example, here in Calgary. One of the cons of the luxury space is actually how long it can take to sell. Because for example, if you have an average home and it takes maybe 60 days to sell, some of these multi-million-dollar listings take 1, 2, even 3 years to sell. Sometimes they don't even sell, and then you just invested thousands of dollars into marketing and you don't get anything back. You lost that money, nothing came of it. Now, if you market properly, you are gonna get maybe new buyers, you are gonna get some new opportunities from that if you market properly and use social media and use creative strategies. But if you just upload it to the MLS, let it sit there and hope that it sells, it might not sell in a tough market, and that's the reality of it. It's a tough price point, not everybody can afford it. So one of the cons, one of the big cons of the luxury space is that you do have a smaller buyer's pool, and if your market isn't as strong as it otherwise could be, you might be sitting on it for a while and it might not actually sell, which could in turn mean that you're losing quite a bit of money if you're properly investing in the twilight photos, the videos, the content, the single property websites, all that good stuff that you need to do for these upper listings. It might not sell. And that leads me to the second point. Despite it taking about the same amount of time and effort to list a $1 million home compared to an average price point home, it does cost a lot more money. So you are going to be into it for quite a bit more. If you decide to do some of the videos like I've done, I'll link one of my top performing videos in the description, but it does cost thousands of dollars, whereas the average price point home might only cost $1,000 to list, do all the marketing content and all of that. So the pros are definitely there. You get paid more, it's more exclusive, it's, you know, a bit more of an adventure when you're listing these homes, and you do get to see some really cool stuff. However, if your market's tough, sometimes it might not sell, which means you're out of money. Sometimes it might take a long time, which means again that you're sitting on it, that kind of stuff. So there's pros and cons to both. Now, let's talk about the average price point home. This is where things get really interesting because, you know, here in Calgary, the average price point is give or take just below $500,000. It changes kind of around the 470 to 480 mark, fluctuates between that month to month. Now let's talk about this because a lot of people think, you know, it's just better to get into the luxury space, sell a couple homes a year and you're making the same amount as you would if you sell multiple and you're using volume to your benefit if you're dealing with the average price point of home. But here's what I want to say. Let's talk about the benefits of dealing with the average price point home. One of the main benefits is the buyer pool. If you're working in that, you know, average price point of your city here in Calgary, again, about $470,000 to $500,000, it's a price point that almost everybody can afford. You get people that are buying the first house, you get people that are relocating, you get people that are moving down from a bigger house. It's a huge buyer's pool. So the opportunity for your property to get sold and your marketing relates to many more people. So the opportunity is great and there's a high volume turnover. Let's say in Calgary, over $2 million. Usually only one or two of those sell per month in all of Calgary. But if you look at the properties in the $500,000 range, there's hundreds of those selling every single month. The turnover is high, the volume is there, so you can use that to your advantage. Because again, usually if you list a property like that, you have a much greater chance of selling it and selling it quickly. So that means while you might get less commission, you are going to keep a more consistent business flow and it's going to be more dependable compared to if you're selling a very bespoke, sometimes polarizing, custom luxury high-end home. So some of the top agents in our city do zero luxury real estate. They just do high volume of average price point homes. It's dependable, it's consistent, you know what you're gonna get, and it's something that works very well for the buyer pool here in our city, especially when you're dealing with a market that isn't so great and it's a little bit tough. Having that as your business and the base of your business, dealing with those homes is actually extremely advantageous. Now let's talk about the cons of dealing with the average price point home. One of the biggest cons is exactly the opposite of what we talked about at the start with the pros of the luxury listings. If you're selling a home that's $500,000, it takes about the same amount of effort and time to list that home as it does a multi-million-dollar listing. So let's say it takes about 12 hours work, just fictitiously speaking, for example's sake, to list a multi-million-dollar home and you get, you know, $30,000 out of that. It would take about 12 hours to list a $500,000 home where you might get $8,000 out of that. So you can see there that the ROI is about 4 times more, whatever, in this example for this listing. So that means that the time versus value ROI on a smaller average price point home isn't as significant as the luxury homes. Now, the other con, and again, this is sort of the polar opposite to the luxury space, is the fact that there's so many of these listings. If you're looking at the 2 million plus or 1 million plus, in certain neighborhoods, there's only going to be a handful of those listings. So it's much easier to stand out because there's one of a few. And usually those homes are very unique, so it's going to attract very specific buyers. However, when you're dealing with the average price point, there's tons of homes and tons of buyers, which means that it's actually easier to get lost in the commotion. And now you're not one of a few, you're one of many, and you're a little fish in a big pond, which can make it sometimes harder to stand out with a listing. So guys, there you have it. You have the two opposite ends of the spectrum. Now, personally, if we were in a very hot market, I would say it's actually better to work with the luxury listings because again, time versus money ROI is significant, and I just love dealing with that space. I love how high-end properties show the marketing and the content, and it really allows you to go above and beyond and showcase crazy properties like that with unique and trending and innovative marketing strategies. So if the market was a little bit better, I would say I'd put all my eggs in that basket. However, in a market that's a bit slower or slightly plateaued, I would actually say it's in your best interest to go for the average price point homes, because there's more likeliness that it's going to sell, and you can use volume to your advantage in these high turnover communities. If you guys have any questions about the luxury space, about the average price point homes, about anything, drop a comment below. I love when you guys engage with my content. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you already haven't. Thank you so much for tuning in as always, and we will see you next time.